think we need to start practically supporting victims and survivors and throwing money at them and their situation. You know, so often people can't escape because they're economically trapped. So what if we were to give, you know, £10,000 or £20,000 to the victim to be able to escape? What if we were to give them safe housing that was genuinely suitable for their needs? You know, what if we were to really economically support them? What if we were to get perpetrators to pay compensation and pay back all the money that they siphoned off from the victim over the years, all the economic abuse, because we're letting them keep all the profits of that crime, that economic abuse. What if we were to really start dealing with it down those sorts of routes? It's so crucial to recognize how the perpetrator has eroded the victim's autonomy and their decision-making abilities. And I think that this is the same for adult victims and child victims, by the way, that if you've been subjected to controlling abuse like this, then your whole identity as a decision maker, as somebody whose feelings and opinions and judgments matter, has been hugely eroded and attacked. So I think the golden rule of working with anyone in this situation is to reinforce them as a decision maker, as somebody whose feelings and needs and judgments matter. And by doing that, you're helping to counter the harm that the perpetrator's done. You're helping to, you know, to take somebody who's been reduced to feeling like they're this big and that this is how much their feelings matter, and expand back out this person who's been just enormously squashed and eroded. So again, it's just so many different things you can do while you're interacting with them to reinforce that you respect them. So, you know, recognize their strengths and tell them about the strengths that you recognize. You know, tell them about, you know, these are the ways I can see that you have been trying so hard in this situation, and you know, these are the ways that I can see you've been succeeding in trying to protect yourself, to protect your children, to stop it getting worse, you know, to try to keep the peace day by day. And I recognize why you were doing that, and you know, that you were doing a really, you know, that by and large you were doing the absolute best you could with that, and you were often so successful with that. You had to, you know, you had to adapt and compromise, and you had to you know, you had to dig so deep to try to find a way to survive through this situation. Often, you know, with coping strategies, they look dysfunctional to the outside, but for the person in that situation, that was their best option for surviving. So tell the survivor that, say, you know, that that this might seem illogical to some people, but I get why you were doing this, and that this was your best option for surviving, and you took it. So, you know, tell them this, you know, reinforce to them that you understand why they were doing what they were doing, and tell them that, you know, you recognize their intelligence and their emotional strength and their capacities and their skills. They probably haven't heard about, you know, what skills they have in years, because the perpetrator has cut them off from many of the people who would give them a positive assessment of themselves. Many of the people who would like them and build their self-esteem, the perpetrators cut them off from those people, or really limited their access to them. So start building their self-esteem and telling them all the things that you like and respect about them. And if you're working with them, try to respect them as a decision maker. And I know that can be tough, because sometimes it's really hard if you're watching somebody make decisions and you think they're making the wrong ones, and you want to kind of swoop in and stop them and save them. But I think it's so important for their long-term kind of well-being to try to respect them as a decision maker, and to say, I see why you think this is the best path forward. Perhaps say, I can see some problems with this path, and I can see some benefits to it, and this is what I see, and I respect what you see, and you know, I'm going to support you as best I can, as you know, as we move forward with this. So yeah, just try to be respectful of them as a decision maker as much as you can, because what these people don't need is to be swooped in and saved, because that is just more erosion of their autonomy. They're not, you know, they're not dolls, and they're not animals, they're not pets. You know, they're people whose human rights and agency and sense of themselves need to be built back up, because they've been crushed. So yeah, I think that's so important. And again, I would just say this applies to children as well. Children may never have had any sense of themselves really as decision makers, because they were never allowed by the perpetrator to make decisions, and then they weren't allowed by the family court either to make decisions because their wish not to see the perpetrator or not to see them in certain ways and contexts was overridden by the court. So they may never have had a sense of personal power, or that their feelings mattered. So again, anything you can do to give that child a sense that their feelings matter, that their wishes matter, to give them some choices and then respect them as a choice maker is really, really, really helpful. The last thing we want to do with people who've already been abused by a controlling person is to control them some more. You know, we need to do the opposite of that. We need to build them up as decision makers, adult or child. I think that we have the framing of domestic abuse and family violence all wrong in so many different ways. And I've already talked about how we kind of misunderstand what's causing the abuse and what's going to stop it. But also I think we greatly underestimate the toll that all of this has taken on the people who've experienced it, but also how amazing they are for having survived it at all, even if they only survived it by the skin of their teeth. They were holding on by the tips of their fingernails, even if they've been really harmed and damaged by it, even if, you know, they feel like they're only functioning on 2%. The fact that they survived it at all is remarkable, because what they've been through is so severe, and people will play that down and say, oh, you had a bad marriage, you know, this was a turbulent relationship, you had a lot of arguments, you know, people play it and play it and play it down. But no, they were tortured and they were living with repeated human rights violations. And let me just be clear, this is the case even if they were never ever hit. I'm not saying that you need to be physically tortured by somebody, you know, physically hurting your body. They were psychologically and socially, mentally and emotionally tortured for months or years or even decades. So the fact that they found ways to survive and sometimes even found ways to break free, I just don't think we give them anywhere near enough credit for that. I think that if it was up to me, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, if it was up to me, we would be recognizing their huge bravery and courage and just what remarkable people they were to have survived this at all in any circumstances. I think we should be handing out medals, and I think we should be having parades in honor of their bravery, because they were forced to fight a war that they never signed up for. They never signed up to fight a war. They never signed up to be a soldier, but they had to fight a war for their own safety and their own well-being and their own life itself. And when I say life, again, I don't mean like necessarily that it was life or death, but the ability to live their life in the way that they had wanted to as a human being, and you know, to be able to just get control of their life again. They had to fight this battle for years, and they encountered levels of trauma similar to what soldiers encounter in war, and yet nobody recognizes this, and nobody gives them any credit for it. So I would be handing out medals and I would be organizing parades to recognize their bravery and courage. And even if that will never happen in real life, that is what I think they deserve. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, I think we have a really long way to go in recognizing what's going on here and getting it right. But yeah, I think survivors, like I say, I think that their courageousness is just incredible.